December 14, 2010, the Arizona desert. A tactical border patrol team moves silently through a known smuggling corridor, a dark stretch often used by cartel crews. It's quiet. Too quiet. They've been tracking a group, 5 men cutting through the brush. No backpacks, no drugs, just water bottles and rifles. That means one thing: a rip crew. Cartel enforcers sent not to smuggle, but to rob smugglers. Armed, unpredictable, and dangerous. The lead agent is Brian Terry, a decorated Marine, a cop's cop, the kind of man who trains for the worst-case scenario and hopes he never has to see it. Tonight, he sees it.
A special Border Patrol team in Arizona was fighting in part with beanbag guns last December 14th. That's according to newly released court documents in the murder of Border Patrol agent Brian Terry, shown here in a training exercise. Beanbag guns are often part of standard issue weapons, so agents can choose non-lethal force. The documents say Terry's squad spotted a group of illegal immigrants, some with assault rifles. When they refused to drop their weapons, agents fired less than lethal beanbags. The bandits fired back with real bullets. Agent Terry was shot and killed. His partners returned fire with a rifle and pistol, but it was too late.
They recover weapons at the scene. Romanian-made AK-style rifles. At first, nothing seems unusual, until the serial numbers are checked, and that's when it all begins to unravel. These rifles weren't smuggled across the border by criminals, they were purchased legally in Phoenix, with ATF agents watching.
With the amount of guns that we put out there, I don't think anybody really fathoms how long we're going to be dealing with this.
Not just watching, allowing it. The rifles were part of a federal program meant to track guns from US sellers to cartel buyers. But something went terribly wrong. The guns disappeared, the suspects vanished, and nobody stopped them. Not until one of those guns showed up next to Brian Terry's body. It sparked an internal panic, then a national scandal, one that exposed one of the most reckless operations ever approved by the US government. An operation the public would soon know by name Operation Fast and Furious. To understand how this happened, how 2 cartel rifles linked to a federal operation ended up at a murder scene, you have to go back a year. Early 2010, Phoenix, Arizona. Weapons aren't being smuggled across the border hidden in crates, they're being bought in plain sight. Cartel operatives are walking into gun stores, flashing IDs, and leaving with bags full of rifles. Not one time, not 2, hundreds of times. Young guys, no jobs, no gun experience, dropping thousands in cash, coming back days later for more. These are straw buyers, people paid by traffickers to buy guns under their own names, then hand them off. And federal agents? They're watching. Following the cars, recording license plates, documenting meetings in fast food parking lots. They know it's illegal, but they've been ordered not to act. Because this is the start of something bigger. The idea? Let the guns go. Track them to cartel leaders. Build a conspiracy case big enough to take down an entire trafficking network. It sounds like a movie, but on the ground, it's chaos. There are no trackers in the weapons, no way to follow them once they cross the border, no arrests, just surveillance and frustration. One man buys over 600 firearms in a matter of months. Assault rifles, pistols, and multiple .50 caliber rifles, powerful enough to pierce armored vehicles and even aircraft. ATF agents tail him. They see guns handed off to couriers, they trace the shipments to stash houses. But every time they try to shut it down, they're told, let it ride. He's valuable, they're told. He'll lead them to the bigger fish. But the numbers keep climbing. By the end of 2010, more than 2,000 weapons have been allowed to walk. Some turn up at crime scenes in Mexico. Others vanish entirely. and the death toll rises. And in Mexico, at least 150 civilians and Mexican law enforcement officers are believed to have been killed by Fast and Furious-linked guns. Inside the Bureau, patience is gone. Some agents begin leaking information. Whistleblowers step forward. Then the desert shootout happens. Brian Terry is dead. And now, a federal agent was killed by one of their own cases. This wasn't just a failed sting. This was the spark that blew it all wide open. In the weeks after Brian Terry's death, ATF headquarters in Phoenix fell eerily quiet. Filed away case reports vanished from desks, and agents who once pushed hard to intervene found their voices muted by directives from above. Behind closed doors, supervisors scrubbed emails and reworded memos to erase any mention of gun walking. On the surface, it looked like business as usual, but beneath, the Bureau was scrambling to contain a scandal that was already out of control. It all came crashing into daylight when Special Agent John Dodson took the stand before Congress. Dodson had been in the field from day one. He described being ordered to let weapons flow freely into Mexico, fully aware of the dangers. His testimony shattered the official line that no program existed, and it sparked a flood of leaks.
We have to identify these people, build a case against them, investigate them, and this was their answer to do that.
Why isn't that a legitimate reason?
Because a lot of people are going to get hurt with those firearms between the time we let them go and the time they're recovered again in a crime.
Surveillance photos, wiretap transcripts, internal warnings long ignored. Overnight, Operation Fast and Furious went from secret tactic to national embarrassment. Congress launched its inquiry, spearheaded by Senator Chuck Grassley and Representative Darrell Issa. They subpoenaed documents, deposed ATF and DOJ officials, and highlighted a culture that rewarded secrecy over safety. One internal email sent just weeks before Terry's shooting warned that continuing the operation risked losing control of the entire gun pipeline. Yet the reply, "Stay the course," became emblematic of the chain of command that chose ambition over accountability. The political fallout was unprecedented. U.S. Attorney Dennis Burke resigned. Acting ATF Director Kenneth Melson was quietly reassigned. In 2012, Attorney General Eric Holder became the first sitting AG held in contempt of Congress for refusing to hand over documents.
We assigned Inspector General to do a thorough report that was just issued, confirming that, in fact, Eric Holder did not know about this, that he took prompt action. The people who did initiate this were held accountable.
But despite the high-profile exits and withering reports of significant management failures, no one faced criminal charges. The major players, the policymakers who greenlit the strategy, slipped away with their careers largely intact. Meanwhile, the guns kept surfacing. A sniper rifle traced to Fast and Furious was found in a cartel training camp outside Culiacan. A cache of AK-style rifles showed up at a mass shooting in Tamaulipas. Families in Sonora held photos of loved ones lost to weapons they could trace back to licensed Arizona stores. These were real consequences of a so-called controlled experiment that spiraled into tragedy. In the end, Operation Fast and Furious became a cautionary tale of what happens when ambition outpaces oversight. An idea intended to map criminal networks turned into a public spectacle of betrayal, of agents on the ground, of border communities, and of the very public servants sworn to protect them. Hey everyone, thanks for making it to the end of my first video. I hope this deep dive shed light on a story that still echoes through law enforcement and border policy today. I'd love to hear your thoughts. What surprised you most? Let me know in the comments. And if you're into this kind of in-depth reporting, consider subscribing. I've got more stories coming that I can't wait to share. Catch you next time.